On the morning of the 27th, Beijing time, a piece of shocking news suddenly came. Former Chinese Premier Li Keqiang died of a heart attack in Shanghai. The official media said in a news briefing issued on the morning of the 27th that Li Keqiang was resting in Shanghai recently. On October 26, 2023, he suffered a sudden heart attack. Despite all efforts to rescue him, but failed. He passed away in Shanghai at 0 to 10 on October 27 at the age of 68. The formal memorial was also released today. The speed can be said to be quite fast. The timing of Li Keqiang's death can be said to be quite coincidental and quite abnormal. At a time when the top leadership of the CCP was in turmoil, senior military officials were being purged. And the command level of the rocket force was being blamed. Defense Minister Li Shangfu and Foreign Minister Qin Gang were dismissed just now. 2 of the 5 state councillors were dismissed. At this time, news of the death of Li Keqiang, who had just stepped down as Prime Minister 6 months ago, came out. I believe that the first impression given to most people is it's quite unnatural. That was certainly my first impression, especially of heart disease. This cause of death is much higher than Li Keqiang's 10 years as Prime Minister. Both the work intensity and mental pressure are quite high. He did not have a heart attack during his tenure as Prime Minister. He relaxed and rested 7 months after he retired. But he had a heart attack. This sounds very suspicious. Li Keqiang is only 68 years old and younger than the Chinese. The current average life expectancy is 77 years. Which is even lower than the average life expectancy of the leaders of the Communist Party of China and the country, that is, the average life expectancy of leaders at or above the deputy state level. There are statistics on the average lifespan of CCP leaders at this level, but from a rough look, it should be over 90 years old. You are like former Prime Minister Li Peng. When he died, he was 97 years old. Song Ping's husband, Chen Shunyao, former Deputy Secretary of the Party Committee of Tsinghua University, died at the age of 102. As for Song Ping himself, he is still alive now. He is already over 106 years old. There is a long list of former CCP leaders who lived to be 100 years old. For example, former Vice Chairman of the Central Military Commission Zhang Zhen was 101 years old when he died. Former Vice Chairman of the Communist Party of China Wang Dongxing was 100 years old when he died. And former Secretary of the Secretariat of the Central Committee of the Communist Party of China Deng Liqin was 100 years old when he died. Mao Zedong's former secretary Li Rui was 102 years old when he died, etc. As for those who live to be over 90 years old, there are even more. Jiang Zemin was also over 96 years old when he died. So pull it. Li Keqiang can be said to have died after the Cultural Revolution. The youngest Zheng nationality leader, before him. There was another Politburo Standing Committee member in 2007. Huang Zhu died of pancreatic cancer. He was 69 years old, slightly older than Li Keqiang. As for Hu Yaobang, he was 74 when he died. Even before the Cultural Revolution, the health conditions of the CCP leaders were not as good as today. Take Liu Shaoqi for example. He was criticized in his later years and suffered a heavy mental blow. At the end of his life, he was not only deprived of his privileges, but also the right of ordinary people to seek medical treatment. Liu Shaoqi was 71 years old when he died. And he was also more powerful than Li Qi. Zhou Enlai lived longer than Li Keqiang at the age of 78 when he died. So in comparison, Li Keqiang really died young. He was quite young among the leaders of the CCP, which is very unusual. In addition, if we look closely at the process from Li Keqiang's illness to his death, there are also doubts. It is said that Li Keqiang stayed at the Dongjiao Hotel in Shanghai. The hospital where he was sent for rescue was Shuguang Hospital, affiliated to Shanghai University of Traditional Chinese Medicine. I checked on Google Maps this morning. There were 3 routes from the hotel where he stayed to the hospital, because the time I checked in the morning was around 10 o'clock, which is equivalent to 10 o'clock in the evening in China. As for the driving time, the 3 routes are 13 minutes, 14 minutes and 17 minutes respectively. If it were during the day, it would probably take more time on the road. But Li Keqiang will be different when he is sent for rescue. The police will stop all other vehicles on the road to ensure that Li Keqiang is sent to the hospital as quickly as possible. It is said that because I am not a medical expert and I only found information on the internet, the gold standard for myocardial infarction is that the rescue time is within 120 minutes, that is, within 2 hours of the onset of the disease. First aid at the scene was ineffective from the time Li Keqiang became ill, and then sent to the hospital for rescue. If we measure it in terms of width, it is within an hour. After arriving at the hospital, it stands to reason that there should still be time to carry out rescue operations. As myocardial infarction is a common disease, the success rate of rescue in major hospitals in Shanghai is quite high, over 90%. For ordinary patients, rescue within the effective time, still has a relatively high survival rate. What's more, for a former leader of Zheng nationality and a retired leader of Zheng nationality, there are health doctors equipped by the General Office of the Central Committee of the Communist Party of China, who always conduct regular physical examinations for the leader, especially heart disease, which is a common disease. If a leader is at risk of heart disease, he will definitely make an assessment in advance, and then the doctor will give advice on daily life. If an illness occurs, providing on-site first aid can at least increase the chance of successful hospitalization even if there is no way to eliminate the danger. In other words, under the same circumstances, the chance of successful treatment for Li Keqiang's illness will be far greater than that of ordinary people. However, in the end, he fell into a space of low probability for ordinary people, and the rescue was ineffective. I asked on ChatGPT this morning that the mortality rate from myocardial infarction for people over 60 years old is between 10% and 20%. If this number is roughly correct, then Li Keqiang indeed falls into the small probability range of less than 20%. Of course, you can also talk about individual differences. It is difficult to explain it with simple probabilities. It is just this kind of system. There is no reason to explain it. Even if it has a chance of 1 in 10,000, it will happen. There are many things that are uncontrollable. Random factors, that's true. And it makes sense. The process from when he got sick to when he was sent to the hospital can become a point of doubt. But he could not say that it was sufficient basis for Li Keqiang's death. But combined with what we said before, the CCP is currently in a sensitive time of high-level turmoil. He will not get sick sooner or later. But he will get sick at this time, and the fact that CCP leaders generally live longer. Li Keqiang also died suddenly, so the cause of his death is doubtful. It should be said that he had a pretty solid reason. It is also true that speculation about how Li Keqiang died is also rampant in the Changfa. There are also many rumors This is a problem that Xi Jinping will face for a long time. Furthermore, if Li Keqiang is really the victim of a conspiracy, he can't do anything while in office. Now that he has abdicated, what threat can he create to Xi Jinping? What reason would there be for him to die of a heart attack? This is also the most common question raised by anti-conspiracy theory netizens. In fact, I think it is not difficult to answer this question. No matter how unreasonable you think it is. In fact, this kind of thing happens often. That is, when the opposition is in power. We often see that there are relatively few conspiracies, and politics can still operate relatively according to the explicit rules. However, once the opposition abdicates and one party monopolizes power, it will create opposition and move into the underground system, which will actually lead to further losses. As for the person who has sole power, his suspicion will increase at this time. You said that once a person files a lawsuit, there is no reason to argue. Once his mentality is out of balance, he can imagine the darkest aspects of any matter and exaggerate the risks. At this time, it is extremely easy for the person in power to eliminate hidden dangers, and he will easily take this step. This situation is very common in history. For example, when Song Taizong destroyed the Southern Tang dynasty, Li Yu, the later leader of the Southern Tang dynasty, surrendered to the Song dynasty and moved to Kaifeng. But one day 3 years after he surrendered, Li Yu drank a glass of wine given by the emperor of the Song dynasty, and suddenly died suddenly. The death process was very painful, and his body twitched and pushed back so that his head and feet were shaking. Got hit. History books say this is called thousand machines medicine. So the death of Empress Li was to leave a name for the poison Chanji medicine in history. But if you ask further, Song Taizong has already pacified Jiangnan for 3 years. Every day that passes, Li Yu's sense of presence will be weakened, and he will no longer be a threat. Why did the emperor of the Song dynasty need to kill him? It seems quite uneconomical to leave behind a reputation as a vicious person. So those who think that Xi Jinping does not need to attack Li Keqiang can also ask the same question. As for why Song Taizong Zhao Guangyi wanted to be killed, according to the legend of Empress Li, it was because Empress Xiaozhou's wife, Empress Xiaozhou, was so beautiful that Emperor Taizong of the Song dynasty revolted and seduced her. Xiaozhou was afraid that Li Yu would be dissatisfied and leave hidden dangers, so he took the murderous step. But having said that, Empress Li, so what if he is dissatisfied? He is also a king who has subjugated his country. You are the ancestor of swords and he is donkey meat. What can he do if he is dissatisfied? So in the final analysis, it was still Zhao Guangyi's inner demons that were causing trouble. And the case of Fusheng Master Shadow in AD 976 itself was very strange. How did Song Taizu Zhao Kuangyan die? This reason itself is a big mystery in history. Then I am more inclined to think that it was his younger brother Taizong Zhao Kuangyi who killed his brother to win the throne. That this kind of person has an incorrect source of power is his biggest worry. This inner demon will accompany him throughout his life and he will have a strong sense of insecurity. Therefore, even if someone like Li Yu who is completely unable to cause him any harm becomes suspicious, it must be eliminated. And then quickly. In fact, there are many similar examples in history. If you think there is no need to be cruel, that is because you are standing from the perspective of ordinary people and are not thinking about politics and history. You must not treat it as a mathematical problem. It is not that the unknown x can be solved by substituting the known into the equation on a large time scale. The authoritarian system is very irrational. I have repeatedly reminded everyone in this program that the biggest blind spot for people who think they are sane and rational is that they think others are as sane as they are. They are too accustomed to doing income and cost analysis and think that others also follow these financial statements. Acting logically is not the case. Of course, people who often show off their rationality are often on the outside. When talking about others, they are very rational. But they themselves often do not act according to the logic of financial statements. Now, it is obvious to the naked eye that Xi Jinping's mentality is really quite unbalanced. The recent turmoil surrounding the New Year's Eve holiday is very clear. Explain this. On New Year's Eve, the Lunar New Year holiday in 2024, there was no holiday on this day. It was an 8-day holiday starting from the first day of the first lunar month. But in previous years, the holiday started on New Year's Eve, which was the 30th day of the Lunar New Year. He had no reason to change this convention. Rumor has it that New Year's Eve is homophonic with Xi Jinping's Xi, so New Year's Eve becomes New Year's Eve, which is not good for Xi. Other than that, I really can't find any good reason. Recently, reprints of old books that explained the history of Chongzhen in the late Ming dynasty have been removed from the shelves. They are also considered to have alluded to Xi Jinping. If a figure avoids taboos to this extent, it means that his mentality is indeed a snake-like shadow, which is quite unhealthy. In this kind of mentality, the leader's mind will enter the free association mode, so it is not difficult to understand what kind of unsafe associations he has about other people, no matter how strange they are. If there are psychological counselors and psychiatrists among the audience of our program, for this situation, it is really easy to understand. Others have sorted out the baptismal contradiction. Indeed, the knot between Xi Jinping and Li Keqiang has existed since before he came to power. Before Zheng Qinghong supported Xi Jinping's succession and suppressed the full-scale succession of the Youth League faction, Li Keqiang was the most popular candidate to succeed the General Secretary. Then think about it. Since Xi Jinping came to power, what are the people who have blocked his succession and posed threats to him in his criminal history? Needless to say, he ended up in Qincheng prison. Zhou Yongkang and Guo Bosheng also went to accompany him within a few years. Zhu Kehou died of illness after being captured. If you push it down from this context, well, it is indeed quite possible. Li Keqiang's today is actually just a late fate. As for what threats he poses to Xi Jinping today, is there really anything concrete? There are many things in the Black Country that we don't know. For example, before Qin Gang disappeared, who knew about his affair with Fu Shaoshan, the illegitimate child in the United States? And Li Shangfu, who had disappeared for so long that even he was dismissed from all his posts. The reason for his downfall is actually still a mystery to this day. It is all speculation and no one knows the details. As for what everyone knows, there have been several public disagreements between Li Keqiang and Xi Jinping. Every time something like this happens, Li Keqiang will become a hot topic of public opinion, and points will be awarded to him and points deducted from Xi Jinping. Judging from the character he has shown, it's not difficult to imagine the torment in his heart. I've been tired of it for a long time. The year 2020 is a critical year for the poverty alleviation campaign promoted by Xi Jinping. However, at the press conference at the end of the two sessions on May 28 of this year, Li Keqiang said that there are 600 million people in China whose monthly income is less than 1,000 yuan. And publicly slapping one in the face is tantamount to publicly saying that you have gone through so much trouble. Poverty alleviation is useless. Also at the National People's Congress that year, when the draft of the Hong Kong version of the national security law was being voted on, Li Keqiang, who was sitting next to Xi Jinping, pressed the voting machine and extended his middle finger. This action was banned that year. Call it a Termination Gate event. Also in August 2022, after the Beidaihe conference, Li Keqiang went to Shenzhen to lay flowers at the bronze statue of Deng Xiaoping in Lianhua Mountain to express his desire to firmly follow Deng Xiaoping's line. Also, before he left office this year, in his farewell speech to the staff of the General Office of the State Council, he said that people are doing it and God is watching, which is also an insinuation. Every time Li Keqiang comes out to sing the opposite, he will win applause. Not to mention the rumors about the Shi Chia ceremony before the 20th National Congress of the Communist Party of China last year. Do you think it will leave a psychological shadow on Xi Jinping? Although Xi Jinping has gradually taken away the tangible rights left by Li Jinping in the past 10 years, there is no way to take them away. Li Keqiang's advantage in public opinion will not disappear when Li Keqiang leaves office, unless he really disappears from the world and disappears from the wish list of the system reformists. Another reminder to everyone: never forget your idol. Putinton. Tintin has just done a big thing recently, that is, he killed the rebellious Prigogimp chef. And he said that Prigogimp was a pilot and swore to die. This is a tragedy. It seems to say it's like it has nothing to do with you. You are right and follow the idol's footsteps. Since idols have set such an example, what kind of impact do you think it will have on fans? The more I say it, the more truthful it becomes. It seems that Li Keqiang is really the victim of the conspiracy. But let me make it clear that this is just my personal opinion. It is completely private and is my subjective speculation. Friends can also make opposite speculations. Anyway, it's anyone's guess now. Maybe the truth of this matter will be like the famous case of the fallen candle shadow in the early Northern Song dynasty, leaving it to future generations to speculate and comment. Then we have to say a few words about Li Keqiang's death. What did he leave behind? In fact, Li Keqiang has not left any positive political legacy during his 10 years as Prime Minister. He has neither been able to prevent the deterioration of Sino-US relations, nor has he been able to prevent the reset from happening. He also failed to prevent the financial crisis, the arrival of the rhinoceros, and even failed to persist in street stall economics. Li Keqiang is responsible for every crisis at present. To use an analogy, a gentler and more polite word for evaluation, I think, is lackluster. Well, maybe he can change our impression now, which is the most beneficial legacy he has left to history. Maybe it was his sudden death that caused such an impact on people and brought endless questions. Perhaps this is the most profound mark he left on Chinese history. What mark was it? Since we are all guessing how he died. Of course, officials in the system are also speculating that other retired senior officials are also speculating. He himself is the cause of the turmoil. He is unstable and the people's hearts are unstable. This will also strengthen Xi Jinping's suspicion of everyone, forming the cycle of doubts. This may be the most direct consequence of his sudden death. If Li Keqiang really died abnormally due to some man-made reasons, then the cruelty of the struggle within the CCP has once again broken through the bottom line. Xi Jinping. He used to arrest people through the anti-corruption campaign. Later, more people were investigated and detained by the Central Commission for Discipline Inspection for Economic Crimes because they violated some discipline of the central government. After Zhou Yongkang, for example, he stopped using public charges to win political power. Politburo Standing Committee members will not attack former members of the Politburo Standing Committee with such charges. However, threats to him certainly exist at this level. In the absence of clear rules to take advantage of, he is now worryingly embarking on the path of his idol Putin, which is suspected of using assassination to eliminate political opponents. However, in the history of the Chinese Communist Party, this is actually a method that has tried its best to avoid it. How did Mao Zedong defeat his opponents? Under normal circumstances, they rely on the enlarged meeting of the Politburo or the plenary session of the Central Committee to launch attacks within conscious procedures and defeat political opponents. When this method was not very effective and handy, Mao Zedong mobilized grassroots supporters to engage in social movements to defeat his opponents. In fact, all these methods are based on conspiracy and conspiracy. In the final analysis, they are still conspiracy. They can be written into Mao Zedong's so-called struggle thoughts and philosophy. And Mao Zedong himself was not slow to admit it. As for political assassinations, they are always buried in the most secret corners and can never be acknowledged. There were only a few assassinations in Mao's life that he was implicated in. The main ones were two. One was successful and the other was unsuccessful. The time of success was the death of Liu Zhidan, the founder of the Soviet area in northern Shaanxi. The time that failed was that Wang Ming was given chronic poison by a health doctor in Yan'an. So later Wang Ming went to the Soviet Union and claimed to be cured, breaking away from Mao Zedong's control and assassinating him. This thing would make a political group fall into chaos. The abyss is falling into a cycle of naked violence. However, he may not necessarily cause the group to disintegrate immediately. It also depends on other environmental factors. The CCP can now say that all internal and external factors are quite unfavorable to it and its stability. The financial crisis is about to come. And important positions at the top of the CCP are also quite unstable. Li Keqiang died suddenly under such circumstances, and the frenzy of suspicion caused by him will definitely add to the chaos. Well, this is the inevitable impact of Li Keqiang's status as a former prime minister. I said in the first two programs that we have gained an important experience in the past 2 years, that is, every year you have no way to predict what will happen next year. As a result, I fell behind the times as soon as I said this. It should be that you have no way to predict what will happen next month every month. In June, no one would have thought that Keqiang would disappear so quickly and be removed. In July, no one expected that Defense Minister Ri Sang-bok would also disappear. From August to September, no one thought about Li Keqiang's death in October. So in October, could you think about what would happen in November and December? Unexpectedly. So everyone just needs to remember one thing now, which is to fasten your seat belts and prepare for the arrival of stormy waves.